It was supposed to be a night of perfect, shining joy. Reese and I stood on a small, raised platform in the middle of the large room, smiling at all the happy faces who had come to celebrate our engagement. I wore a simple white dress that shimmered under the fancy chandelier light, and I felt like a princess in a perfect, happy story. The sound of happy chatter and soft jazz music made the air feel warm and fuzzy. Then Gwendolyn, Reese's mother, walked slowly to the stage. She was a tall woman, always dressed in dark, serious colors, and she held a champagne flute like it was a heavy, cold weapon. The room instantly became quiet. I expected a simple, kind congratulations, and a few warm words about Reese. Instead, she looked directly past Reese, focusing her cold, sharp gaze right on me. She lifted her glass slowly, not in a toast, but in a challenge. "Reese," she said, her voice loud and cutting through the silence, "I'm warning you publicly, in front of all these people." My breath caught instantly in my throat. I felt a terrible premonition of pain. "Don't marry her. Audrey is not a strong stock. She'll never give you the important, large family you truly deserve." The party died completely. Everyone looked at their shoes or stared at the wall. The cold, terrible silence lasted forever, a physical, heavy weight on my chest. This was the first cold strike, a massive, public warning that completely ruined my happy moment. My entire body felt suddenly cold and completely stiff. The shock was so bad that my mind felt completely empty. I looked at Reese, and his face was a terrible mess of deep red shame and utter confusion. He didn't jump up to defend me immediately, which hurt me almost as much as his mother's cruel words. He just stood there, completely stunned, like a statue that couldn't move or speak. The awful silence was only broken when people started whispering and clearing their throats. Gwendolyn, satisfied with the terrible damage she had done, sat down slowly. Later, Reese found his mother and quickly pulled her into the coat room, where I could hear his loud, low, angry voice arguing with her sharp, cold replies. But the damage was already completely done. I felt the cold, judgmental eyes of his entire extended family watching me. They didn't look angry at Gwendolyn. They just looked curious about me, as if I was a broken item. Right there, on the happiest day of my life, a terrible seed of insecurity about my body and my worth was firmly planted, deep inside my heart. I knew that in their eyes, I was already a massive, impending failure. Despite the terrible, open rejection from his mother, Reese and I completely held on to each other. Her cruel words had actually pushed us closer together, strengthening the bond we shared. We decided to go through with the small, quiet wedding ceremony 3 months later. We kept the wedding small, simple, and only invited the people we knew truly loved us, not the people who judged us. Gwendolyn and the rest of the family, Reese's older sister, Beatrice, and her quiet husband, attended because they had to. They sat stiffly in the front row. They were all completely cold, distant, and had tight, disapproving expressions on their faces for the entire ceremony. They did not clap loudly when we kissed, and they left the simple reception quickly, without saying any kind words. It was completely clear to everyone that our marriage was not a union they supported in any way. Their collective coldness was like a thick, chilling fog that settled over our new beginning. I smiled brightly for the photos, but inside, I knew this was not just a small family disagreement. It was the formal start of years of cold, painful tension. We were married, but we felt completely alone against the massive force of their judgment. The moment we walked back into our quiet, small apartment after our short honeymoon, the cold, heavy pressure began immediately. It was as if Gwendolyn had been holding her breath, just waiting for the wedding to be over so she could start her cruel demands again. The questions began immediately and never stopped. "So, when can we expect the first little grandchild?" She would ask at every family dinner, her voice loud and demanding. The question was never asked with sweet excitement, but with cold, sharp expectation, like she was demanding a due payment. If we said we were enjoying being newlyweds, she would sigh loudly and say, "Don't delay too much. The family needs more children, and Reese is getting older." The sheer pressure was immense and completely constant. It felt like a massive clock was ticking loudly inside my head, counting down my worth. Reese tried to protect me by making simple jokes or quickly changing the subject, but Gwendolyn would just stare him down coldly. I felt like I was constantly standing on a flimsy small stage, being judged for my failure to perform a basic function. Reese and I were excited and full of hope during our first year of trying for a baby. We thought it would be easy and fun, something we would share together as a married couple. We bought sweet small things for the nursery in secret, imagining a future where our small apartment was full of tiny shoes and happy chaos. Each month, however, the hope would rise quickly, and then it would crash down painfully into disappointment when my cycle came. Each disappointment felt like a small, quiet failure, but we held each other and kept moving. Reese was truly wonderful. He always reassured me that we were a team, no matter what. But the family's questions grew more intense and pointed. Are you two actually trying hard enough? Beatrice asked me at a picnic, while her 3 noisy children screamed happily in the grass. Maybe you need to try harder to relax, Audrey. Stress can stop things from happening, you know? Her advice was cold, thinly veiled criticism, and it made the whole process feel exposed and painfully public. After a full year passed with absolutely no sign of pregnancy, the tone shifted completely. Gwendolyn stopped asking when and started asking what is wrong. Her simple curiosity changed into cold, cruel, satisfied accusation. One afternoon she called me when Reese was out for work. Her voice was low, and she spoke very slowly, making sure every word caused maximum pain. It's been over 12 months, Audrey, she hissed into the phone. That is not normal. You must be honest with Reese now. Is there a massive problem with you? She said the word problem with a cold, almost satisfied smirk in her voice, as if she had been waiting for this moment since the engagement party. She made me feel completely worthless and deeply ashamed of my own body. Her coldness pushed me into action. I knew I couldn't bear her constant questioning and terrible smugness anymore. I needed a final, definitive answer, whether it was good or bad. We finally booked an immediate, terrifying appointment to see a specialized fertility doctor. It took weeks of endless, embarrassing tests and long, silent waiting periods in cold, sterile rooms. We held hands tightly, trying to look brave for each other, but inside we were both completely terrified. The doctor finally called us into his office and gently sat us down. He gave us the cold, clinical diagnosis: unexplained infertility. There was no clear, simple physical reason, no easy operation, just a simple, crushing inability to make a baby. The news was completely devastating and absolutely overwhelming. We felt like we had completely failed at the most basic, expected thing we were supposed to do as a married couple. The world outside the doctor's office seemed bright and normal, but our world felt dark and broken. We drove home in complete silence, the terrible weight of the diagnosis crushing us both completely. We knew this was the one piece of information Gwendolyn would use to completely destroy us. The diagnosis was still a fresh, painful wound, and Beatrice was ready to use it as a cold, cruel weapon. At a large, noisy family barbecue, she spent the entire time loudly complaining to everyone who would listen about the terrible chaos of raising her 3 children. She dramatically moaned about school fees and lack of sleep. Then she fixed her cold gaze on me. She forced a smile that didn't reach her cold eyes. Honestly, Audrey, you're the one who completely dodged a massive bullet, she said, raising her voice so the people nearby could hear her. You are so lucky you don't have this constant exhaustion and chaos. I guess it's a good simple thing that you can't have any kids, right? It saves you simple trouble. She let out a small, sharp, cruel laugh, trying to make the barb sound like a joke. Reese stood up immediately, his hands balled into tight fists, but I touched his arm gently. I was shaking, but I stayed quiet. I knew that their cruelty was only going to get much, much worse. The cold, yearly holiday tradition of humiliation arrived again with Thanksgiving. The formal dining table was overflowing with fancy china and perfect food, but the atmosphere was thick with Gwendolyn's quiet, cold disapproval. After the main dinner, Gwendolyn stood up slowly, tapping a spoon on a glass. She held a huge, expensive-looking gift box wrapped in shiny paper. She announced to the entire family that she had a special, heartfelt consolation gift, just for me. My stomach instantly clenched, bracing myself for the cold attack. I slowly unwrapped the box. Inside was a beautiful, extremely expensive designer handbag that I would never have bought for myself. As I held the bag, trying to look grateful, Gwendolyn looked straight at the entire table and said, her voice dripping with cruel sweetness, Well, since Audrey will never need a diaper bag or a simple changing mat, I thought she might as well have a proper beautiful designer bag instead. The entire family laughed nervously, looking down at their cold plates, too scared to meet my eyes or defend me. It was a complete, public, painful shaming. The escalating public cruelty from Reese's family only made us pull completely back into our own private, quiet world. We started the physically and emotionally exhausting fertility treatments. Countless appointments, painful injections every night, and strong medications that made me feel constantly sick and bloated. The process was completely consuming our small savings and all our energy. We made a strong decision to keep it a secret from Gwendolyn and Beatrice. We knew that their toxic, cold commentary would only increase our stress and ruin the small, fragile hope we were desperately holding on to. We were fighting a massive, high-stakes battle completely alone, protecting our small, precious bubble fiercely. The treatments were a massive strain, but knowing we were doing it in complete secret, just for us, made the emotional pain slightly more bearable. We kept the hope alive, even as our savings disappeared quickly. Our small precious secret was quickly and cruelly exposed by Beatrice, Reese's horrible sister. She invited herself over one rainy Tuesday, claiming she needed to borrow a tool. While Reese was out getting the tool from the garage, Beatrice, always the horrible snoop, wandered into his small, quiet home office. She was looking for anything bad she could use against me. She found a small, discreet pamphlet from the fertility clinic hidden deep inside a large stack of old paperwork. She immediately confronted me in the kitchen, her face twisted with a cold, smug satisfaction. Going to extremes now, are we, Audrey? Spending Reese's hard-earned money on this nonsense? She hissed, waving the pamphlet like it was damning evidence. I felt a wave of complete violation and panic wash over me. The small, fragile secret was out, and I knew I had mere minutes before Gwendolyn knew every single detail and the brutal, emotional war would start immediately. Just as I completely expected, Gwendolyn called me the very next morning. She did not offer any comfort or any simple kindness. Her call was filled with terrible, weaponized concern that was colder than ice. I heard you are seeing those expensive specialists, she said, letting the word specialist hang in the air like something dirty and embarrassing. I am just worried for Reese and his finances, Audrey. You're wasting so much money on these terrible procedures. Maybe this complete lack of success is a sign from God that it truly wasn't meant to be for you too. You should really think about saving my son the massive trouble and expense. Her voice was designed perfectly to make me feel completely guilty and completely selfish. She was not worried about me. She was simply enjoying my failure and desperately trying to turn Reese against me by talking about money. I felt completely sick to my stomach after I finally hung up the phone. I knew with terrible certainty that she would never stop until I was gone. The painful, cold phone call from Gwendolyn was the final, absolute breaking point for Reese. He came home from work and found me sitting completely still, staring at the wall, too emotionally exhausted to even cry. I told him every cold, cruel word she had said, especially the part about saving him the trouble and expense. His face went completely pale, and then a strong, hard, focused anger replaced the shock. This is not simply just my mother's terrible opinion anymore, Audrey. This is cold, calculated emotional abuse, he said, his voice quiet but completely solid. He then pulled out his old, forgotten phone from a drawer. From this moment on, we need to completely start recording all of them, he stated firmly. Every single painful phone call, every cruel joke at a party, every cold, backhanded comment. We need undeniable proof of what they're truly like, when they think they are safe and completely untouchable. His absolute loyalty was finally completely solidified, and we officially became a determined, powerful secret team. Our first great chance to gather proof came quickly at a large, noisy family birthday party for Reese's young nephew. Beatrice and Gwendolyn were a complete, unstoppable force. They deliberately cornered me in the small, empty kitchen while I was filling the ice bucket. They launched into a terrible synchronized double-pronged attack. Gwendolyn started first, listing all my defects. I was too stressed, too weak, too thin, too emotional, which were surely the reason for the terrible failure. Beatrice quickly piled on, listing all the thousands of dollars Reese had wasted on me. They spoke loudly, confidently, and cruelly, completely certain that they were safe and completely alone. I stayed completely still, maintaining a blank expression. I said nothing. But my hand was tucked secretly into my pocket, where my old discreet phone was recording every single terrible vile word of their entire conversation. We had the cold, hard evidence we needed. We began our third and absolute final IVF cycle. It was a massive, desperate, all-or-nothing roll of the dice. We had literally poured our last savings and all our remaining strength and hope into this one single attempt. The emotional pressure was immense and completely suffocating me. The entire family knew we were trying again, and they made constant, loud, negative predictions about the outcome. Gwendolyn would send me cruel texts saying, "Don't bother looking at baby names, Audrey. You'll only feel much worse when it doesn't work." Beatrice loudly told everyone at the gym that I was obsessed and wasting Reese's entire future. I felt like I was running a high-stakes, exhausting race, and my entire family was standing on the side loudly, actively cheering for me to completely fail. I tried desperately to focus only on the small, fragile hope of the embryo, but their constant negative voices were a terrible, poisonous drone in the back of my mind. The day of the official test arrived quickly. I was completely sick with fear and anxiety. I took the call from the doctor while Reese held my hand so tightly that it hurt. We heard the quiet, sad, gentle tone in the doctor's voice, and we instantly knew the terrible truth before he even spoke the final words. The simple, awful reality was immediate and absolute. The pregnancy test was negative. It was completely over. We had no more frozen embryos left, no more money remaining for treatments, and absolutely no more emotional strength to fight the massive medical system or Gwendolyn's cold expectations. We sat completely broken on our small couch, holding each other and grieving deeply for the beautiful future we had just completely lost forever. The pain was worse than anything I had ever felt. I felt like I had not only failed Reese, but I had completely confirmed every terrible, cold prediction Gwendolyn had ever made about me. Gwendolyn's ultimate, cold-hearted, planned betrayal came quickly. A few days after our painful test, she invited us over for a small, simple dinner, claiming she wanted to offer us comfort and a new, peaceful path forward. Foolishly, I went hoping for one small moment of simple human kindness. I should have known better. After the dinner, she did not offer a hug or a single kind word. Instead, she presented us with a thick stack of papers, a printed, formal, numbered list of local adoption agencies. "This is your only option now, children," she stated, tapping the paper sharply with her fingernail. "But honestly, Audrey, are you truly cut out for it? It takes a very special, strong person to raise a child that is not their own. It's simply not the same as a real biological child." Her cold words were the final, absolute strike against my entire worth as a woman and as a partner. Reese's face was completely white with silent, pure rage. We sat completely motionless in our small car in Gwendolyn's dark driveway after the terrible dinner. The car was heavy with silence, but this time, the silence was not about grief. It was about focused, hard determination. I looked at Reese and I saw the end of my sadness. A strong, cold strength rose up immediately from the total ruins of my grief. "I am completely, truly done with them, Reese," I said clearly, my voice completely steady and cold. "I will not let them completely break me into a million pieces anymore with their terrible, cruel words and their cold expectations." The pain of failure was officially over, replaced by a sudden, powerful, simple need to fight back, not for a baby, but for my own survival and to completely reclaim our power and our dignity from his toxic, cruel family. We had the evidence, we had the truth, and now we had a new, cold resolve to completely defeat them. In complete and total secrecy, we quickly contacted a professional private adoption agency. We knew instantly that this was our only new, true path to building our beautiful family. We started the long, difficult, rigorous process. Home studies, detailed background checks, and endless, complicated interviews. But this process felt completely different and entirely full of hope. It became our brilliant beacon of hope, a quiet, secret, powerful project that we protected fiercely from the rest of the cold world, especially from Reese's terrible family. Every single interview, every piece of paperwork we completed, was a small step further away from the toxic shame they had tried to inflict on us for years. We stopped mourning what we could not have biologically and started building the beautiful, loving family we truly could have together. We immediately began a complete, powerful year of silence. We understood that their cold, toxic cruelty only grew and fed when we gave them fresh information about our fragile, personal lives. So, we immediately drastically reduced contact with Reese's family. We stopped sharing anything personal, anything about our emotions, or anything about our future hopes. When we absolutely had to see them at family events, we were polite, completely distant, and completely unreadable. We gave them nothing at all to use against us. We did not react to their constant cold jabs or their pointed questions. The family, completely accustomed to my emotional distress and tears, mistook this new quiet silence for shame and total complete defeat. They assumed I was completely broken and hiding away in my sadness, which was exactly what we desperately needed them to believe about us. Then, in the cold late autumn, we got the sudden, completely unexpected, wonderful call. A brave, young, kind birth mother had completely chosen us to raise her child. She was having a beautiful baby girl who was due in the middle of December, just a few days before the big annual Christmas holidays. The news hit us like a massive wave of pure, beautiful, terrifying joy. It washed away all the months of cold grief and the shame Gwendolyn had planted. We immediately cried together, completely overwhelmed with relief and pure, honest happiness. We started decorating a small, quiet, peaceful room in our home. We had a daughter coming. The immense weight of the world lifted completely off my shoulders, and the terrible feeling of failure was completely replaced by a strong, powerful sense of purpose. We were finally going to be parents. The formal invitation for the huge, annual Christmas Eve dinner arrived in the mail a few weeks later. The baby girl was due any day now, and the house was suddenly full of tiny clothes and furniture. Reese and I looked at the beautiful fancy card in the quiet kitchen. We looked at each other across the small table, and we both knew instantly that this was the perfect, final, high-stakes moment. "We are going," I said, my voice completely solid and completely determined, "and we are going to give them the one single absolute announcement they completely deserve for every single cruel, cold word they have ever said to us over these terrible years." The plan for the massive ambush was immediate and perfectly clear in my mind. We were going to use their own cold, cruel words to completely destroy their standing. The plan for the huge reveal was simple, brilliant, and deeply destructive. I, with Reese's total support and technical help, spent 2 entire days creating a short, powerful, and deeply emotional video. It was not a sweet video. It was a cold document of their complete malice. It was a careful montage of the most hurtful audio clips we had collected over the past year: Gwendolyn's cold, demanding calls, the kitchen ambush, the cruel diaper bag comment, and Beatrice's mocking laughter. We set the terrible audio against quiet, peaceful, scenic footage of us walking and just loving each other. Then the video came to a complete, sharp stop. The music suddenly swelled loudly. The screen immediately showed the first, clear sonogram picture of our beautiful tiny daughter, followed by her chosen name, brightly written, Grace. The video was short, powerful, and completely undeniable. We arrived at the large, formal Christmas Eve dinner. The huge house was sparkling with holiday lights and smelled of expensive perfume. The entire family was gathered, dressed in formal, expensive attire. Gwendolyn and Beatrice immediately met us at the door, their faces set in cold, judgmental expressions. They started with their usual jabs right away. "Well, look who decided to come out of hiding," Gwendolyn said with a forced, cold smile. "Still just the two of you, I see," Beatrice added, looking pointedly at my flat stomach. I just smiled sweetly, completely serene and calm. I did not engage in the cold conversation. I completely nodded politely. I was completely calm and quietly waiting for my single powerful moment. I walked confidently into the massive lion's den, armed with their own terrible, cruel words. We had to completely endure the cold public dinner performance for 2 long, agonizing hours. Throughout the expensive meal, we were subjected to their constant, cold, casual mocking comments. Gwendolyn talked loudly and constantly about the importance of legacy and strong bloodlines, looking directly at me every time she spoke the word. Beatrice kept making loud, dramatic comments about how lucky I was to not have the stress of children in my life, completely unaware that our daughter was about to be born any day now. Reese and I endured it all with complete, serene patience. We did not react. We did not show any emotion. We just smiled calmly and continued to eat, quietly waiting for the final, absolute moment. The dessert to arrive. Our strange, quiet silence completely confused them, but they just assumed we were too depressed and too ashamed to fight back anymore. As the huge, beautiful dessert was finally served, a massive, fancy cake decorated with Christmas greenery, I knew instantly that the moment had completely arrived. I stood up slowly from the table. The sharp sound of my chair scraping on the floor made everyone immediately look up at me. I took a deep, steadying breath and gently tapped my fork against my crystal glass. The entire room fell into a complete, expectant, curious silence. Reese and I have a wonderful, special announcement we'd like to share with all of you tonight. I said clearly, my voice completely steady and strong, looking straight into Gwendolyn's cold, sharp, surprised eyes. She managed to force a cold, practiced smile, clearly expecting me to announce that we had finally accepted total defeat, and were moving to another country. She had absolutely no idea what was truly coming next. I walked slowly and calmly over to the large living room TV mounted on the wall, and quickly connected my phone to the screen. We wanted to share the true journey that got us here with all of you, I said to the entire waiting room. I pressed the play button instantly. The entire family watched quietly as the screen lit up with peaceful scenic footage. Then the first cold, recorded audio clip began to play loudly. Gwendolyn's own terrible, vile recorded voice, loud and completely clear, saying the cruel, cold words. Don't marry her. She'll never give you the family you deserve. The family gasped loudly, horrified. As Beatrice's recorded voice came on, mocking my chaos-free life and my failure, their real-life faces turned completely ashen white with sudden, pure panic and disbelief. Their own cruel, cold words, words they thought were secret and private, were suddenly filling the entire room with terrible, undeniable shame and cold exposure. The whole room was frozen in complete, cold shock. As Gwendolyn's own recorded voice called me barren, and questioned my worth as a woman, her real-life self completely collapsed back into her fancy chair, not with sorrow, but with the cold, terrible, public shock of her own complete failure. She started sobbing quietly, but they were tears of pure self-pity, not regret. Beatrice stayed looking only at the beautiful Persian rug on the floor, her entire body shaking silently. The family was completely silent, watching the horrific, recorded evidence of their cold, cruel malice. Then the video suddenly cut hard, ending the terrible audio. The music immediately swelled happily, and the screen showed the first, clear, beautiful sonogram picture of our baby girl. Her name, brightly written, Grace, flashed powerfully on the huge screen. The screen instantly went completely black, leaving a complete, terrifying silence in the room. There was a massive, crushing, deafening silence in the room, heavy with cold shame and utter, public exposure. Gwendolyn finally lifted her wet face, looking at me with a pathetic, pleading expression. She tried to stammer out a massive lie or an empty excuse, but no words would come out of her mouth. Beatrice stayed looking only at the floor, completely defeated. I looked directly at Gwendolyn, my voice completely steady and cold, absolutely free of any emotion or regret. Our beautiful daughter Grace will be born next week, I announced clearly, letting the pure, final truth sink in completely. You have shown us clearly over many, many years that you have absolutely no good place in her completely wonderful life. You will not meet her. You will not see her. You will not have any contact with her, ever. I simply turned my back on all of them, took Reese's hand and said, goodbye. We walked immediately out of the house, hand in hand, leaving them completely defeated and drowning in their own cruel shame. The final scene was completely different, peaceful, quiet, and filled with pure, simple, honest love. Reese and I were sitting happily together in our own small, cozy home on Christmas Day. The tree was beautifully glowing with soft light, and the air was filled with the smell of sweet pine and cinnamon, not cold, corporate pretense. We were completely safe, completely free, and completely alone in our pure, unadulterated joy. We were hanging a beautiful, small, wooden ornament with the name Grace written on it in shiny silver glitter. We talked softly about the future, about her upcoming arrival, and about all the beautiful small moments we would share with her. We were no longer completely defined by his family's cold cruelty, toxic words, or the years of terrible, heavy shame. We were only defined by the new, wonderful, honest love and family we had completely built for ourselves. The cold, cruel cycle of the past was completely and finally broken forever, replaced by the happy, loving future we had finally earned.